Good morning, YouTube. We are getting ready to start. This morning we have a full panel and we have a guest, Josh Levs, and we're going to discuss his book, All In. And we are starting in about 10 seconds, so hold tight.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the rights of human beings, to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. By any means.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
If you're hearing his voice,
You're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. My name is Benjamin Dixon. I am, as always, your host. Same person every single time. I don't know why I introduce myself every single time I come on the air. I guess it's just out of habit. But whatever the reason, it is Monday morning. It is a beautiful Monday morning here in Boston. We can't take that for granted. It is not always a beautiful day here in Boston. And so the fact that the sun is shining, even just a little bit, is a beautiful thing. So I want to thank you for joining us this morning. This morning we have a very special show. We have a panel of guests, and we're going to discuss Black fatherhood. But first, before we go to the panel, I want to discuss a book that I've been reading and that I absolutely love called All In. And actually, let me do better than that. Let me just show you the book and the author. The book is called All In, How Our Work-First Culture Fails Dads, Families, and Businesses, and How We Can Fix It Together. The author is joining me today, Josh Levs. He is a journalist, a broadcast journalist. He has been with CNN. He has been with NPR. And I'm just glad to have him here this morning. Josh, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for this book. Could you just give me just a brief overview, tell my listeners and tell our audience a little bit about about yourself and your perspective and what led you to write the book?
Sure. So the big picture of the book is helping people understand how great today's fathers are in general, because it's only when we understand that we'll be able to tackle a lot of the backward structures that are still acting as gender police in America, pushing women to stay home, pushing men to stay at work. My background is, I'm a journalist, and did lots of years at NPR, lots of years on CNN. And at CNN, when I started doing segments with fellow dads, the response was out of this world. It was ridiculously huge. So many people contacted me about these segments, and that's when I discovered that in mainstream media, no one was really bringing the voices of dads to the conversations about all these issues that we need to have them on. And then I faced my own situation, which we can talk about if you want, but basically I became the dad in the news because I challenged a discriminatory policy at Time Warner. So that all of that experience led me to write this book, and I want people to really to see it and to learn the facts about today's families so that we can help make businesses and society better.
Wow, you know what? I vaguely remember. Could you help me and the audience to remember the incident with Time Warner and everything that you went through, which was somewhat of the impetus for you starting to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, it was very strange policy. So my wife and I had two boys, and then she was pregnant with our daughter. And we looked at our situation. We realized that I would be needed at home to take care of our daughter. And to me, that is just a perfectly legitimate decision. One parent, the man or the woman, a parent taking care of a child, perfectly natural. But Time Warner had this very strange policy under which anyone could get 10 paid weeks to take care of a child, except a man who impregnated the child's mother. So if I put my daughter up for adoption and some other guy adopted her, he'd get 10 paid weeks. Or if we could use a surrogate, I could get 10 paid weeks. But they couldn't wrap their minds around the idea that a man in a traditional situation with his wife giving birth might be caregiver. So I'd ask them quietly to change the policy, give it to me. They wouldn't give me an answer. Months went by, and then my daughter was born in an emergency, and still no answer. And then 11 days later, I'm home holding my 4-pound preemie baby, taking care of my sick wife and my two boys, and that's when I get the answer from work saying, no, you cannot have this benefit. So long story short, I took legal action.
Wow, wow. You know that in your book you were discussing a few scenarios. One that was somewhat similar, uniquely different, obviously, where the gentleman was told to go ahead and take a little time with his kid, with his family, his newborn baby, and because he took 3 days, which apparently was too long, he had a problem when he came back to work. Can you just tell me a little bit about that situation? And from your
Yeah, people need to open their eyes to these kinds of situations because this is what's happening in America, and it's discrimination against men and women, and that's what we need everyone to understand. It's discrimination against all of us. So, this one situation you're talking about, yeah, this man's daughter was born in an emergency. He left during the workday. He just took off the rest of that week, so it was just a couple days. He got back to work on Monday, and his boss called him in and rebuked him for having taken off so much time. And that boss was a pregnant woman, which surprised me and surprises some others when they hear it. But I learned in doing this book, when I talked to these experts, a lot of women who are fighting the fight in the trenches, they said, you know what, the gender police in the American workplace are both men and women who have these old-fashioned ideas about what men should do and what women should do.
That's something. That's something. It reminds me of my political science professor in my master's program. He was describing a situation where he had the same scenario. His wife had to give birth early, and he was an attorney at the time. And he basically had to let his boss know that he would leave the firm if they did not allow him to go to the delivery room. They did not want to allow him to leave to go to the delivery room. So it's amazing the spectrum for which men face, in a lot of ways, gender discrimination, particularly when it comes to parenthood. So I'm excited about your book, and I definitely think our readers should read it because just in general, you cover a lot of the bases in terms of the legal disputes that men go through just to get, if they can even get custody. And you mentioned how some men are even discouraged to even try to get custody. And that I've run into a lot of scenarios like that. And then you also mentioned about this bumbling dad kind of syndrome, where people think dads are incompetent. Unpack that a little bit for me.
Sure. So the bumbling dad syndrome, a lot of people think that the core of the problem is actually television and this dominant image of dads in commercials and TV shows as buffoons, as incapable. And so I traced you through some situations. Like there was this one diaper ad by a major company that the ad literally just a couple of years ago, and the ad said, "We put our diapers to this is literally their words, the toughest test imaginable, leaving the baby with dad for the weekend." And so, like, dads can't handle diapers, we can't change diapers. But what happened was, so many men and women complained that same company, Huggies, learned that they had made a mistake. They sent people to a dad summit that I attend. They did brand new ads that support fatherhood. And some people at the time said, "Oh, stop complaining. Find a sense of humor. Why are you guys complaining about this?" But what people need to understand is that image, that dads are incapable, that image propagates these backward structures. Things like, why do we have no paid maternity leave in America? Why do so few companies offer paternity leave? It's the same reason. It's this belief that men are useless at home. The woman should stay home, so why does she need her salary? She's supposed to stay home. The man is supposed to stay at work because he's incapable at home. Who needs paternity leave? So there are real-life consequences to that bumbling dad stereotype, and that's one thing that we have to tackle together.
Very, very, very true. And I do my best as a dad. Me personally, sometimes I just give in to that idea that, oh, my wife has to do this because I can't handle this particular task. When in reality, we're all very capable of doing the responsibilities of fatherhood. It's just sometimes we go along with this narrative that's absolutely not true.
I'm so glad you said that, because can I jump in? Because this is interesting. I have a chapter in here in which I talk about male privilege and female gatekeeping. So there are things that both men and women have to stop doing. One thing is that this male privilege, that this stereotype gives us that privilege where we can say, "Oh, sorry, honey, got to go to work," or "Sorry, this is really your thing," or even on the subconscious level where we don't realize we're doing it. But the flip side is female gatekeeping, in which girls are raised to believe that they can take care of babies and boys can't. So then when you get to adulthood, there's a lot of moms who, if the dad takes the baby, the mom might say, "No, don't hold them like that. No, don't change the diaper that way." And moms also need to accept that our way of doing it is just as well. So in achieving equality, yes, we need to change these structures, our laws and policies and stigmas, but we also need to confront our own attitudes and make sure that we are doing everything we can to make equality happen.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. What are your thoughts on Virgin? The CEO just announced that he's going to give a year of paternity leave for the father to be with his family. What are your thoughts and any insights?
Well, I reached out to Richard Branson. I haven't heard back directly, but I do know that based on the recording, it's only for a tiny sliver of the company. I think it makes a really good statement. You know, what he says in his statement is that it's good business to support your workers as parents, whether they're men or women. That statement in itself is fantastic. I don't think anyone is expecting U.S. companies, by and large, to start offering a full year. But what I do show is that companies that do better policies discover that it's really good business. Facebook gives 17 paid weeks to men or women. And Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, she's in my book, and she says, I have had women and men tell me that one of the reasons they want to work for Facebook is our support for fatherhood. Because younger workers, both male and female, are starting to understand that a place that supports fatherhood wants women to be able to work up the ranks. Because if you're supporting fatherhood, you're letting them stay home, so women have the choice not to.
Right.
And so more and more companies are starting to do things like 2 months, maybe 3 months. And what we need nationally is a paid leave system that operates the way it does in a few states right now, that would allow maybe at least 6 weeks of paid leave for a parent.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is so crucial, so crucial. It's difficult. It's not always the wife that can stay home because of the arrangements, the structure, quite frankly. And I think there's a lot of dads who are very capable of doing what needs to be done, but if they can't get the time off, it really puts the entire family unit at risk. Because let's say the wife is the breadwinner. Let's say she's on the lion's share of the profit. If she has to take off, and there's some jobs, I know there's some careers right now that don't offer maternity leave, or at least paid maternity leave. They can of course get off. A lot of teachers, if they get pregnant and deliver during the school year, that time in a lot of school districts is not paid time off. So that can be a very cumbersome for families. Let's shift gears really hard, because I contacted you because of one particular chapter, and I'm glad I did, because I enjoyed the entire book. Tell me what you found about Black fatherhood based on some of the statistics, from the CDC and a couple of key articles that you read.
Right. Okay. So yeah, and I thought you saw the shout out in the New York Times. It was great to have that. So one of the chapters in here is about how it's called How Black Fathers Are Doing Best of All, but There's Still a Crisis. So the dominant image of Black fathers in America is wrong. The image, the idea that most Black fathers are not there, that they're not present, that they're not home with their kids, it's factually false. Right. So what I did in this book is I went to the hardest and best statistics that exist. I worked with the census, I worked with the CDC, and the lead researcher at the CDC on this says in my book, she says that the statistics that I'm reporting here mark, this is her quote, the end of the myth of the absent Black father. It's so important for people to understand that by far the majority of Black fathers live with their children, take care of their children, and in general, dads in America who are working, we spend an average of 3 hours a day with our kids. We bathe and clothe them and feed them and take care of them in numerous ways. And within that, Black dads are actually doing the best of all. Black dads on average spend the most time doing those things with their kids throughout the week. So the good side of what I'm able to report there, and this is important that America understand this, is that by far, and you've talked about this, you said I'm a good dad, committed dad, but that doesn't make me an exception. That makes me the rule. That's exactly right. In general, Black dads are doing a great job, and we should all understand that.
Absolutely. And you know what? I knew it intuitively. I mean, just from anecdotal information and observing everyone in my circle, there is not a single Black father that I know of and that I have encountered that is not actively engaged in their children's lives. So whenever people, and I think you mentioned this also with Ta-Nehisi Coates, how he mentioned where he gets too much praise for things that is quite normal, and that really becomes an insult. Like, this is just what we do. What are some of the other things, the most interesting conundrums? And actually, let me point to something in particular. You said that Black fathers are doing the best, but there's still a crisis, untitled crisis portion.
Right. Okay. So and this is where things get really tricky, because what happens is a lot of statistics get taken out of context. So what I'm able to tell you is that by far most Black dads live with their kids. But here's the negative side. And I know it sounds confusing, so we'll unpack this. Most Black kids don't live with their dads. Now, here's how that happened, okay? Most Black fathers have 2 or 3 kids maybe and live with their children. There are also black dads. There are dads of every race out there who are what I call serial impregnators, who go around having lots of babies by lots of women. And it's a particularly big problem in the black community. So there are some of these guys out there who are the minority, but they're off having 6, 7, 8 kids. And I have a guy in the book, a chapter from a man who was like that, 8 kids by 3 women, who then turned his life around and finally realized he should be raising his kids and developed relationships with them. 2 of them made it to the NFL, and he's close with them now. So we talk about this problem. So the first thing to understand is that it's a minority of dads who are like that. But there's just barely more than half, just slightly over half the kids in this country who are black don't live with their fathers. But one more thing on this point, so important to understand. Not living with your father does not mean you're fatherless. Right? So we hear statistics in general about fatherlessness, and these statistics are wrong. All the statistics that you've heard in America, all races, about fatherlessness are wrong. Because people take someone's address. Let's say that my wife and I get divorced, and my kids, their primary address is with my wife, but I'm still with them every day. Some people would count that as fatherless. So the fact that just over half the black kids in America don't live with their father doesn't mean they're fatherless. It's still a minority of black children who don't have their fathers somehow in their lives.
Let me hang on one second. I have an applause here somewhere. I just want to play that because that is absolutely one of the biggest lies that we've all bought into. I mean, black people, white people, this is a narrative that has been promulgated that is absolutely not true. Whereas when I did my video, I did it from an anecdotal perspective, but now evidence, hard numbers from the CDC show that black fathers are the most active. And even though we have a lot of kids that don't live with their dads, that does not necessarily mean that those dads are not active in those children's lives and doing their job and carrying their responsibilities. Here's a question for you, Josh, and then I'll let you get to the rest of your day. Why do you think this narrative is so pervasive that black fathers, and you alluded a couple things in your book, but I just, off the top of your head, why is this narrative allowed to continue if it's not true?
Yeah, the first and most important thing to understand is you got the double whammy of bigotry. Okay, so there are all of these false images, as you and I discussed, about dads in general. People start with this presumption that dads aren't good fathers, that we're not involved, that we're incapable. So there's sexism in that against men and women. Okay, so that's across all races. Then you add, from black dads, you add the racism, and that's what Charles Blow was talking about in his New York Times op-ed about my book. Then you have to add the racism, and there's generations of racism ingrained in American culture against black men. I mean, against black people, but also specifically against black men. And so so there's that, but there's also, to some extent, these statistics being used out of context as scapegoating. When there are, systemic problems that we need to talk about in this country, these statistics can be used out of context to say, well, no, the real problem facing the black community is that most black dads aren't there.
Right.
I did this interview the other day with Michael Smirkanis on the radio. He said, why am I learning this from you, Josh Levs? Why didn't I learn this from the NAACP? Why didn't I learn this from civil rights groups? And I said, often they don't know either. This image is so prevalent. But all that said, I will also say that fatherlessness in America across all races is also a problem and something that needs to be addressed. But it's in the case of this false myth of black men. The biggest thing to understand is that we have to hit it from both perspectives. We've got to conquer that sexism and the racism that is creating this false narrative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, the name of the book is All In, and the author is Josh Levs, and I think it's definitely a read that everyone needs to get because it's a holistic look. You cover all the bases in here, even down to this last part, and then the part about the story that you gave of the young man who was going to child support court, and he couldn't pay simply because he was on chemotherapy. And you give the background on that. Any thoughts on that as we get ready to go?
Yeah. No, this is good. I'll point out 2 things. So first of all, when it comes to custody and all these issues, or giving, providing money, we are doing unconstitutional things in this country. Unquestionably, it's factually unconstitutional. men, and some women, but usually men, are being thrown in jail without being charged at all, simply because a woman fills out a piece of paper saying the man did not pass along child support money. It's so obviously unconstitutional. They don't even get representation in some of these cases, and they'll sit there in jail for a while. And what we need to understand is the fact that you haven't paid child support, whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't mean that you're sitting on a pile of money. You might not have the money to pay. Now, all the good dads like you and me are ashamed of dads out there who have plenty of money and are refusing to provide child support. Those dads exist and those moms exist. But I say that this term deadbeat dad is another way of generalizing about dads, whereas really there are deadbeat moms too. So we should be saying, deadbeat parents. And so these problems exist as well. And can I toss in one more thing too?
Absolutely.
Great. I just want people to know, another thing I did in this book is I went to jail. And I spent time with dads in jail. And so I'm able to report on the firsthand with people's stories. First of all, the disproportionate effect that this incarceration crisis is having on black men and black fathers, and I get their backstories. And also that there are reasons for hope on all these fronts. In the court level, there are reasons for hope. I can show you in the book that things we can do to make things better. And with this incarceration crisis, there are steps we can take, including there are programs now to help dads in jail build relationships with their own kids. That way, when they get out of jail, they have someone that's waiting for them, family that's waiting for them, instead of just their fellow criminals waiting for them. So I am able to hit a lot of topics in here, and I'm just really passionate about this. I hope everyone will take a look at it.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Levs, the book name is All In. And I definitely think it's a read that we all need, especially leading up to Father's Day. There's information in there that we just did not know. And in the next break, I'm going to bring on the panel. I have a panel of guests, and first thing we're going to discuss is why didn't we get this information from the NAACP, and why do we have to go to? You're still our brother, so we appreciate you bringing them.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is something that we should have unpacked over the years. But now that it's out, we're going to get the word out, and one of the best ways we can do it, ladies and gentlemen, is to get this book and read the entire book. But I want you to read that chapter on how black fathers are doing the best by far, even though there's still a crisis. Josh, thanks so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, after this break, we'll be back with the panel, and we'll discuss this book a little bit more as we continue in this fatherhood episode. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We will be back right after this break. And if you want to join the conversation, you can do so, 857-600-0518.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
Warm fleece on a cold day.
I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm joined by three panelists that I'm very happy to have here today. Let me just make a couple of adjustments here really quickly. I'm joined by Jesse Harriet, Pastor Robbie Morganfield, and John Little, all of whom, well, actually, Jesse, this is your first time on the show with me, right?
Yes, it is. I'm glad to be here, Ben.
Absolutely glad to have you. Jesse is a spirituality scholar and a speaker. He travels the country discussing and lecturing different facets of human spirituality. And so I'm glad to have him here. Pastor Morganfield is a pastor, a PhD scholar. He preaches and pastors and discusses the intersection of faith and justice. And we also are joined by John Little. He is an education advocate, a political strategist, and just glad to have him back. He's been with us before. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me back, Ben.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let me just go in order here. Let's see, John, I have you up first. John, what are some of your thoughts about this book, the chapter on Black fatherhood? You listened to the entire interview. What do you think?
I did. To me, it was enlightening, and so I immediately got online and I started to realize a lot of those facts were true, and it was sad I didn't know. You know, I was like, I thought the same thing as you. Like, I appreciate Josh for bringing it out. But I wish we would have talked about this more and would have actually been writing about it more.
Yeah, a long time ago, Pastor Morganfield. I mean, why do you think we have not heard about this prior to this book, and particularly why are we having to hear about it from one of our white brothers when we have an entire legion of scholars who could have gathered this research?
Well, I think some part of it is access perhaps to the research, understanding that such information is available. And listening to it myself this morning, I was going wow inside the whole time because it's news to me. And my guess would be that it probably would be the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jesse, you're a dad, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, sir.
Did you know any of these stats that he's throwing out? Did you know them concretely? I think a lot of us knew them anecdotally, but for you, had you heard any of these stats before, and what are your thoughts about them?
I've not really heard those stats before, but I knew them intuitively, like you hinted at earlier. And I mean, everything he's saying, you know, they're definitely my experiences, you know, being a dad and then taking my daughter to the doctor, and, you know, my wife being there and the doctor addressing my wife, and I'm sitting right there and I know the issue, but then the doctor not even looking at me or having a conversation with me, you know, and then people joining the bandwagon and beating down dads as opposed to lifting them up. So everything he said was directly on point, and I wish more people would know about it. And I'm glad for your show because now they will know about it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the reason that I did the show. And actually, a good friend of mine, Kevin, sent over this clip that Josh did with the Smirkonis show, Michael Smirkonis, and they were discussing this. And as I was listening to it, I'm like, this is this is my book. I mean, this is not my book, but this is my video in a nutshell. This is what we knew on a intuitively. We could feel it, we could see it. And whenever we heard people talk about the missing black father, we were like, hey, no, wait a minute. Here we are. We're here and we're active. John, tell me a little bit about you. I know you have a son. You're proud of your son, and I see his pictures all the time online. Tell me a little bit about your perspective in this. I don't know everyone's situation, so if I say something that's wrong, fellas, you just charge it to my head and not my heart. But I don't believe. Are you married to your son's mother? And how does that?
I'm not. We really co-parent, and we really go out of our way to make sure, you know, we're the best parents for him. For me, and why I really want to display a positive image, just because of people I work around, the systems I work in, the stereotype is that black fathers are not around. When I worked in the school system, it would really pain me because that's how they look. You know, they would always, whenever they wanted to set up a parent meeting, they were like, call the mom. And if a father did show up, everyone was looking around like, who is this guy? And so when my son was born, that's one thing that I still continue to do, is just to try to display those positive images.
Absolutely. And Pastor Morganfield, in the book, Josh talked about, Josh Levs talked about going to a funeral of a friend of his who was a good father, and the pastor stood up and he began to say, at a time where there are not enough good black fathers, he was one. And Josh in the book mentioned that how he wanted to stand up and shout. He said, no, that's not true. There are a lot of good black fathers. From your perspective in the pulpit, I know we've all heard this narrative before, and we've heard it for our own community. Do you think it's just a lack of knowledge, or do you think it's perhaps that black fathers aren't going to church and then these pastors are just not seeing the black father? Why is it that our faith leaders are contributing to this false narrative?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Mm.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true that when people come to us, they come to us and tell us about the bad things and not necessarily the good things. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. After this break, we're going to come back and discuss this a little bit more leading up to Father's Day. I think it's very important that not only that this book gets out and people hear about it and read it, but also that we realize it for ourselves at a very nuanced and personal level. We need to know the truth about black fathers and fathers in general. All right, so if you want to join the conversation, 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show, and we will be back right after this.
Hey, if you're like me, you're probably hearing the news that the economy is getting better, right? But there's one problem. You still don't have a job. Get back into the game with Chance.com, the state-of-the-art online employment connection for the new generation. Get access to millions of jobs on Chance that are actually hiring now. Stop searching for outdated job postings. Log on to Chance.com. Create a profile, and then be found. Make the connection you need to get hired today. If you're serious about your career, you've got to check this out. Chance.com. Get that job. Make that chance with Chance.com. JANZZ.com.
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You feel petrified. You're struggling with your mortgage payments, not knowing what to do. You do nothing. But if you do something, you're far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about your options. Call 888-995-HOPE. or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
It's 6:42 p.m. Time for Steve Plato and his son Dylan to do the dishes. They talk about everything from the yuckiness of girls to the awesomeness of his soccer team. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Then, hey! The dreaded splash fight. It's Dad o'clock, and it's the best time of the day. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Buckle up for the ride. Give us a call, 857-600-0518.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm joined by John Little, Pastor Robbie Morganfield, and Jesse Harriet, and we're discussing the Black fatherhood phenomenon, the fact that Black fathers are present, and not just Black fathers. So we're discussing the book All In, but there's in general a narrative of the missing father and the incompetent father and the bumbling father who can't change a diaper. And so this book was fighting it back against that narrative. And one of the most illuminating things in this experience of being a dad, because I think unless you are a father, you really kind of miss this experientially. Once you become a father, you realize how equipped you naturally are to be a father. There are things that you have to learn, obviously. You're not popped out of the womb knowing how to be a father. And you look at other role models. You look at good men in your life who quite frankly, have shown you how to be a good father. And that's when I came to the conclusion, John, that that because of all of the good role models that I saw, it could not be the case that Black fathers are just missing. What do you think about that and some of the examples that you saw?
Yeah, I think spending time with your children is almost like when they tell you to put money into your 401k. And I think we started to realize that because, to be honest, like there was a decline in Black males being with their children. But I think because it was so bad at one point that every Black man has gone out their way to be so much better and to really end that stereotype. But I really think it's still prevalent, although it's not true, the stereotype.
Right, the stereotype and the stigma. Now, something Jesse, that Josh was talking about that I illuminated to is that there is a distraction that happens when we start dismissing the different problems, the socio-economic problems in the Black community. We start dismissing them as being because of the absent Black father, when in actuality this entire generation has Black fathers are doing better than anyone else. I personally think it's an intentional distraction to deflect from what's really happening in the Black community. And I just wonder, what do you think, Jesse? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I think that at the end of the day, with regards to what's going on in the economy and the unemployment rate and what we're experiencing out here in the job field, I think that that adds to the tension that we as fathers possibly feel in the homes. You know, if you're not making enough money at the end of the day, you know, financial strain could cause a strain on the relationship, and maybe it could add to the divorce rate or add to the separation rate, and then the Black father could actually be outside of the home and fulfill that stereotype. So I think they both are problems that we should take a look at, and they both are worthy of our attention.
Right, and that's absolutely true. So it's and if we're quite sober with the reality of it is, he said that despite, and I'm quoting, you're not quoting, I'm paraphrasing Josh here. He said, despite the reality of how good fathers of all races are doing, there's still a swath of children who are living without their father. So it's not as though we're saying Black men are doing it right all across the board. But what we're saying is that we're fighting against a narrative that has been fooling us. The narrative that has, quite frankly, Pastor Morganfield, has covered our eyes. So it's like we are having to do both, and we're having to attack this narrative that black fathers aren't present, because we actually are. But then at the same time, we can't let that small victory, and forgive me, I don't want to belittle that fact, because that's a huge victory, to realize the truth. But it doesn't negate the fact that there's still some broken homes, some children that are raised without their fathers at all. And that, so it's like we have to address this on both sides. We have to fight back this lie, this false narrative, but then we still have to go back in and, as a village, take care of those kids, and help them become the parents that they may not have had. What do you think about that and your experience as a pastor and seeing broken homes, and all of the above? Mhm. Mhm. Got you. So, okay, so in general, because Pastor Morganfield, you sound, and rightfully so, it's good to be skeptical. But I want to ask everyone this, and anyone jump in. First one up gets the mic. What do you think? How how hard is it for you to believe this information? Because it all goes counter to everything we've known or ever thought about black fathers.
I can say something, brother.
Go for it.
Um, uh, I know that I believe the information to be true because I have conversations with black fathers in my family and black fathers that I meet every day. And listen, we're out there. We all are standing in the little girls' aisle. For those of us that have daughters, we shopping for dresses. We're picking out shoes, brother. We're doing hair, and we're not like that little YouTube video that's going around where you have the little girl who's spinning and doing a 360, and you do the magic bun. Some of our daughters' hair texture ain't like that, so we got to actually comb that sucker and brush it and create styles. So we're doing it all, man. And I believe that it's more. I hate to say that it's like an underground thing, where no one knows about it. We all know about it, but statistically, we just need folks to acknowledge it. And I think that what he did with the book was he acknowledged what we already knew to be true. So he did the academic legwork, so to speak, so that the numbers would be there for the scholars, so they wouldn't have nothing to say.
Right, right, and here's a, to be fair to the, author and to the author of the research. This research was actually done by the CDC. Research was done by the CDC, and it was forwarded. The president, I'm not the president. I don't even know the correct title, of the person in charge, but they indicated. Now, I mean, of course, they could be spinning this the wrong way. I personally, I'm not even going to. I don't want to entertain the two sides perspective. We always try to bring another side, because for too long we've had this narrative just pushed down our throat that black men are not there, they're not capable, they're savages, they're running around, they're just getting women pregnant, and we've bought into it so long that at this point it's hard for us to believe anything. I mean, it really is a cognitive dissonance. And I think that speaks to, I hate to use this phrase because it's definitely overused, but it speaks to the power and the efficacy of white supremacy to be able to program our own minds to reject information, and to accept negative information about ourselves, and to reject positive information even when we see that it's true. And I think that this information is going to be difficult for many black people to swallow. I think it's going to be easier for other people to accept this, and we're going to find a lot of black people, and I as I did when I did my video, a lot of people black people in particular were like, well, this is just not true. This is bull. This is expletive this, expletive that. You know, my daddy wasn't there. And I think what happens is when we experience something, that's the manner through which we view everything.
Right.
If we had a bad dad, then we view every other black man as a bad dad. And then, John, back to you. What you said, I think, is very, very true. That because of a season where black men were incarcerated, they were strung out on drugs. Drugs were flooded in our community, and we did have a lull. But I've seen this next generation come back with a vengeance. With, like, I mean, when it comes to being a dad, they come out with a vengeance. What are some of the things that you've seen?
Yeah, I would love to touch on that. And so, let's say historically, there have always been policies that have targeted black men. You know, from slavery all the way up until the 70s and the 80s. And I think one thing that really killed the black family, if you look at it historically, was welfare reform, when it was a specific policy that if you were not married, you could not be in the house, or if you were receiving welfare benefits, that a man couldn't be in the house. And what would happen, and even for me, I'll be honest, when my son was first born, I was laid off, and we were receiving welfare benefits, and we had to say that I did not live in the house. And from there, if you look at the projects and you look at the housing projects, it really took us away from our traditional family, and we're just now starting to build it back. But it's a long time coming.
Wow. I didn't think about that that perspective. The fact that structurally, I think in general, and this is why the book, honestly, I'm not just trying to peddle this guy's book, but in general, there has been a perspective of family, that a patriarchal perspective of family, that if you have a husband and a wife, then everything else is going to be fine. That they don't, there's no possible way they would ever need welfare as a husband and a wife team, or there's no possible way that the wife would have to go out to work so she can stay home. She doesn't need maternity leave because she shouldn't have to work in the first place. We're stuck in this 18th, 19th century perspective of the family, and we're living in a 21st century globalized economy where that's no longer the case. I'm going to throw this out to anyone who wants to jump on it. The question is, what is it going to take for our system and our structure to realize that the dynamics of families are so different that we cannot create programs today based on a patriarchal 18th century family mindset?
I'll jump on it. I think marketing, I come from a marketing background, and we really have to be intentional about putting those images out there. A friend of mine on Facebook, he just jumped on one day and said, hey, I want all the black men to post images of you with your children, because we have to promote that image. And I just think where we are, like, that book is a start, but as a lot of successful and strong working black men, we also have to do it within our networks.
Absolutely. And that's, you know what, honestly, that is why, John, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that black fathers were present because of social media, because I saw kids with their dads. I saw dads taking their kids to, not even just the outward expression. Like, you could tell when people are just putting up pictures to put up. I'm talking about dads who, through the computer screen, you could feel the amount of love that they had for their families and the amount of commitment and amount of sacrifice that they made. And then just looking around my entire, and I don't have a small circle, I have a very large circle. I have two pages worth of people that I interact with, and I have not come across a single guy who is not proud and boast and just does everything he possibly could for his family. And I agree with you 100%, is that we need these images to go not only through our circle, but now we need it to go out into the public. Here's something one of you guys might have to help me with, and maybe I'll call on Jesse, because Jesse, I think we see a lot of things eye to eye. But I personally am struggling with the fact that we're even having to have this conversation. I know it's a necessary conversation, but it kind of gets on my nerves, and it kind of makes me upset, the fact that we as black men are constantly having to prove that we are there and that we are great and that we're doing just as good as anyone else. And based on the CDC statistics, we are actually more active and more engaged. But I have a little chip on my shoulder about the fact that we're having to come from behind. Like this is the fourth quarter, and we've been lied to. We've been winning the game, but we've been lied to all this time, saying that we're not. Help me out with that. How do I get over that?
That is a loaded one. And I hate to say that it feels like someone is picking on us, but you can't overlook the fact that it looks like, you know, they're trying to set up the black man. You know, since we came here, since we landed here in America, they've been trying to separate us, take us away from our wives, separate us from our children, you know, auction us off, sell us off, send us here while they keep our families there. And, you know, it seems like we've been set up. You know, like you said, you know, we have to get back to understanding that we're in a global economy now. We have access to resources, and if you're a proud black man and have a good family, you know, show it. You know, spend more time with your family and let the world know that you were there. You've always been there. You know, and I say the same thing in our religions. You know, as spiritual teachers, we have the power of myth making. You know, if we understand the power of the myths that we teach, you know, we need to unlock more of the family so that we match, you know, what's going on Sundays, you know, and we talk about the family there with what's going on throughout the week. You know, we need to attack it on all fronts and let the world know that we're here and we're not going anywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks, I'm going to take one last break. This is a short break, and when we come back, I just want to get closing remarks from each of my guests, and we're going to discuss a few more little things, and then we'll be done for the day. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show, 857. Well, she'll tell you.
The Benjamin Dixon Show.
There you go.
Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust. You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. Welcome back. All right. So we're going to get out of here, folks. But before we do, I want to give the last word. I actually want to hear from each of these guys. Just anything, any insight, any wisdom, your takeaway, and what you want our listeners to know. I'm going to start with John. John, you're up.
I guess my last moment is, or my last point is, we just need to stay involved. We need to continue to put it out there and just realize, for me, education is the key. I think being at a school and working at a school and helping start a school, the more fathers I saw who were involved in education and kept this thing going, really helped put our kids in a better place and made our culture better. I think we're continuing to grow. And so on my piece, I'll just say education amongst Black fathers and being involved is super important.
Absolutely. Jesse, what's your takeaway?
My takeaway is that, just to rehash what he said, I agree with everything he said. And also, when we see the stereotypes, stomp it out. Everywhere we see it. We see it in media, marketing, out there in the public. Someone says it, get rid of it, stomp it out. That's the only way we're going to silence it once and for all.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more on that. When you see a false narrative, don't let that false narrative stand. Pastor Morganfield, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the great challenge that we really face, and looking at it from a very personal standpoint, my experience has always been that Black fathers have been around, people I know, the people I grew up with. But on the other hand, I think the media representations are often very different from that. And I think the reality is that even our own media, African American media, don't do much to help. And so I think there is where it has to start in some ways, that we have to become convinced. And listening to the author, he talked about how the issue with men and on the job getting time and women being a problem, which is ironic, but in the same way, I think sometimes we're the problem in as it pertains to this issue. So I think we need a new soundtrack. And I think that we've got to come to some different understanding and be able to portray other images of our own experience.
Absolutely. We need a new soundtrack, and that soundtrack has to start this year, right now. There's just no reason, now that we know the truth. I'm gonna lean over here to my spiritual brothers, the pastor and Jesse. Now that we know the truth should set us free. And we should be able to run with this and let people know, not only do we know this on a very personal level, but the statistics bear it out, that Black fathers are not missing, Black fathers are present. Is there more work to do? Absolutely. But we've bought into it, and we've contributed to this problem, this false narrative, so much that even our good old Black president, President Barack Obama, when he speaks, so many times when he speaks to the Black community, he speaks in a manner in which he's instructing and lecturing us about the missing Black dad and how we have to help these single mothers out and all these types of things. And if I can just say my piece, I think it's time for leadership to come to the front that knows the truth, not only based on what's on the paper, but knows the truth personally. And what I'm saying is this, is that, for instance, I'm not picking on President Obama, but I think I will. I support him enough that I can pick on him with this. I think his experiences without a father absolutely shaped his worldview with regard to Black fathers. And I think that it's time for Black leaders across the nation to come up who have had their fathers, because that's going to create an entirely different phenomenon where if the people, like you said, Pastor Morganfield, if people in media, our Black media, our own media outlets, if they didn't have any experience with a good Black father, they need to find some people who do. Because if the truth says, based on the numbers, that Black fathers are present, then we need men and women out there who are going to promote that message until everyone realizes that the average black father is an amazing person and that he's doing his job not because he's special, simply because that's what we do. That's my spiel. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on this Father's Day special. We definitely are going to get this message out to as many people as possible. Thanks for all the listeners, the people who are watching live. We appreciate you. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. Gentlemen, I would love to have you back at some point, so keep your schedules open, and I definitely will reach out to each of you to have you on board. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Benjamin Dixon Show. You guys be blessed, and we'll see you next time.
When we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment,
that we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment,
love.
Until this moment,
love.
Until this moment,
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.